All right, guys, boy oh boy do I have an election breakdown for you. There is a lot of stuff that went down last night, so I want to run through it. I'm going to start with the general overview of what happened. For the first time in my lifetime, the left basically swept, or nearly swept. There were a colossal number of W's last night, as well as some interesting things that happened on the Republican side. So let's start with this article from the Intercept. Then I'll get into Fetterman and Oz and Madison Cawthorne and Summer Lee and all that stuff. So Ryan Grimm says Democratic voters deliver stinging rebuke to party's Manchin-Sinema wing. Voters shrugged off an obscene amount of spending from super PACs to send a message to Democrats: do something. A Republican-backed super PAC on Tuesday fell short in its bid to intervene in a Democratic primary against Pennsylvania State Representative Summer Lee, a 34-year-old black woman and rising star in the party, who fended off the tsunami of outside money to best anti-union attorney Steve Irwin. Let's pause and reflect on the fact that homeboy's name is Steve Irwin. I'm pretty sure that that's also the name of the crocodile hunter, rest in peace. That Steve Irwin was much better than this Steve Irwin. They say the spending from the GOP-backed super PAC linked to AIPAC, of course, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, left Irwin behind less than 1,000 votes. So as of the recording of this right now, Summer Lee is, I read that Summer Lee is up 571 votes to be exact. But I've also read that that's 100% reporting. So it looks like that's going to be the end result. I don't know what the rules are around a recount. The crocodile hunter might ask for a recount. We'll have to wait and see. But it looks like Summer Lee pulled it off. A super PAC funded by the pharmaceutical industry blew more than $1 million in an effort to salvage the career of former Blue Dog chair Kurt Schrader, the Oregon Democrat who cast the deciding vote against drug price reform in the Energy and Commerce Committee, and organized with Representative Josh Gottheimer to derail President Biden's Build Back Better agenda. His opponent, Jamie McLeod Skinner, lambasted him repeatedly as, quote, the Joe Manchin of the House, because Oregon votes by mail and some ballots were blurred and unreadable in areas favorable to Schrader. Results may not be known until early next week, but despite a funding disparity of some 10-1, the incumbent is on the ropes. So as I'm talking to you guys right now, you have McLeod Skinner is still up. So it looks like we may oust a prominent Blue Dog Democrat from the House who killed reducing the price of prescription drugs. That is unbelievably awesome. That's incredible. And we'll talk a little bit more about what happened in these races, but honestly what it looks like is there's a divide that even the establishment cannot hide anymore. And that divide is Manchin and Sinema truly are viewed as Republicans by even normie Democrats. Even normie Democrats who may have voted for Joe Biden, they're not too involved in politics. They now see you can't hide it. The fact that the Manchin and the Sinema types tanked Build Back Better and made it so that Biden couldn't get anything passed. Now, look, I understand the criticisms of Biden too. He didn't fight. He doesn't know how to twist arms. He doesn't know how to play that FDR and LBJ style of politics. But it looks like to your normie Democratic voter, they have a clear villain in the story. And the villains are Manchin and Sinema. And so anybody who's affiliated with that wing, the New Democrat Coalition, the Third Way people, the Blue Dogs, they're getting draxed, man. They got draxed in this election. So let's continue here. Back in Pennsylvania, Connor Lamb, despite having won the endorsement of nearly every Democratic high official and county organization in the state, was beaten handily by Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, despite Fetterman suffering a stroke on Friday, we covered that, and spending Election Day undergoing surgery to have a pacemaker implanted. Lamb had the backing of the real Joe Manchin, hilarious, which his opponent used against him to paint him as a Democrat who'd bucked the party's agenda in the Senate. This is amazing. Now again, what you guys need to understand and why this is such a tipping point and why this was kind of a historic election is because big money kept flooding in to the Manchin types and the Sinema types, the Blue Dogs, the Republican Democrats. They had the backing of Big Pharma. They had the backing of AIPAC. and they were swimming in cash. But even a tsunami of cash couldn't hide the truth from the voters. And the voters were like, that's it, we've had enough. Wait until you see the poll that I'm going to show you in a little bit. It's astonishing, and it backs up everything we've been saying on this show. Another super PAC in Oregon, funded by a crypto fortune and organized around the project of pandemic prevention, Protect Our Future. I love the silly names that they use here. They try to make them sound like value neutral or positive, and then they're like just total scams. Spent some $10 million to boost Carrick Flynn, while the super PAC linked to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, House Majority PAC, also dropped $1 million into the race. It backfired, and local Democrats, as well as national progressives, including the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the so-called Progressive Caucus, and Working Families Party, rallied behind State Representative Andrea Salinas, who appears poised for a victory. Are you noticing a trend here? The further right-wing Democrat, the more corporate Democrat, the more Manchin-Sinema-like Democrats are getting draxed. The stunning wins come as the party debates who is to blame for President Biden's sinking approval rating and increasingly dire forecasts of upcoming midterm losses. Party establishment figures have pointed the finger at the left for making unreasonable demands couched in slogans like defund the police that turn off voters. The progressive wing has countered that Biden's popularity has sunk as centrist Democrats have slowly murdered his agenda, while the left has fought to enact it. Okay, that is undeniably the reason why Democrats have a low approval rating right now. Undeniably the reason. Because all the polls showed it, Biden was most popular when he cut $1,400 checks to people. When he materially delivered for people, his approval rating was high. Now that he hasn't done anything recently, his approval rating is low. The idea that, like, Biden and the Democrats have moved too far left and they've been too ambitious is nonsense. They've done nothing. Manchin-Sinema tanked Build Back Better, no universal pre-K, no lower prescription drug prices, no Medicare expansion, no elder care, no expanded child tax credit. Okay, well, when you don't deliver on those things, that's the problem. That's the problem. Now, I have criticisms of the slogan, defund the police, and I've talked about them before, but the idea that that's the reason why Democrats nationally are not popular is preposterous, because there's not even a handful of Democrats who run on the idea of defund the police. So how can that be the main thing? It's absurd. Tuesday's results suggest Democratic voters, at least those in Pennsylvania and Oregon, would prefer the Democrats do more rather than less, delivering a stinging rebuke to the Sinema Manchin wing of the party. Next week, voters in Texas will cast ballots in a number of runoffs that pit progressives against super PAC-backed centrist Democrats. Big money groups spent some $15 million in those three House races, 2 in Oregon and 1 in Pennsylvania, while outside progressive groups managed just over $2 million. Wow, look at that spending disparity, and the left won, yet prevailed in all three. In North Carolina, the super PACs had better luck spending $7 million against Erica Smith and Nida Alam. The spending came from AIPAC, Democratic Majority for Israel, and mainstream Democrats. The super PAC, organized and funded by LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman, DMFI, and AIPAC dropped some $1.4 million in Valerie Foushee and over Nida Alam, with the crypto-backed Protect Our Future caking in another $1 million. Alam benefited from just $300,000 in outside spending from progressive groups. DMFI and AIPAC put a staggering $3 million behind Don Davis over Erica Smith, with Smith benefiting from roughly $600,000 in outside support, most of it from the Working Families Party. Despite the spending imbalance, Alam came within 9 points of Foushee. Smith was beaten by a 22-1 margin. Okay, so it wasn't a clean sweep. There were a handful of losses. But even in the losses, there was an overperformance given the lack of the money. That says something. Representative Pramila Jayapal, chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, said that the influx of money from Republican donors into Democratic primaries, even if it lost in most of the races, represented a threat that Democrats needed to grapple with. Oh, you mean like when you guys endorsed Shontel Brown over Nina Turner and Shontel Brown was taking money from Republican billionaires? You mean like that? Senator Bernie Sanders recently argued that Democrats need to bar super PAC spending from Democratic primaries and Jayapal told The Intercept she supports such a move. The rest of the wins, she said, were a real blow dealt to big PAC money that thought they could buy every race. But you know what? In the past, they have bought every race. So they had every reason to believe they could continue to buy every race because corruption works. But this was a rare instance where the Manchin-Sinema effect was too obvious. There wasn't even pretending anymore from the Democratic establishment types to, like, want to improve the country for people. It was just like, let's tank the agenda, let's agree with Republicans, and let's wear it on our sleeves. And it turns out, rank-and-file Democrats, even normie Democrats, not just the left, were like, sort of screw you on that. Where was I? Though Lee, like Austin's Greg Caesar in the spring, brings a new addition to the so-called squad in Congress, Ocasio-Cortez said that the evening's results showed her wing of the party moving into a new phase. So much scrapping and organizing has gone into this moment, and I think it marks a transition from counting a few Hail Mary candidates and campaigns like Squad to the teams and talent behind all that, coalescing into a real bench of talent from field organizers to winnable candidates. I mean, look, I don't really want to hear from AOC. I don't really want to hear from anybody in the Squad. They've let everybody down a lot recently. They stabbed Nina Turner in the back. The idea that they're just like pure actors and they're ideological, I don't buy that. They're playing the inside game. But having said that, there were wins for the better candidates last night, and that should be celebrated because at least we know we don't have more Manchins and Cinemas. We're going to have at least Democrats who will go along with something like Build Back Better, which had a lot of wonderful provisions in it. So now, let me show you guys a whole, but buckle up, because I got about 517 things to show you here. So Fetterman, Ken Klippenstein tweeted, "Damn, LOL. Fetterman just had a stroke, dog. Homeboy was stroking out like 3 days ago. And he was honest too, he released a video, like if Trump was undergoing some shit, he's like, I'm good, I'm fine, I don't even know what anybody's talking about, I'm wonderful. As Trump is like struggling to breathe because when he had COVID, remember that? Fetterman's like, yeah, dog, I had a stroke. In the hospital, getting a pacemaker put in him, 59.4% to Connor Lamb's 26.6%. And this was with 87% reporting. That margin for Fetterman may grow. What? www.what.com. So Fetterman crushes Connor Lamb. Connor Lamb is the establishment's bitch. I mean, that's what he is. Oh, and there's the other part. That's hilarious. So here are the different counties, or here are the different districts in Pennsylvania. Purple is Fetterman. Every single one went for Fetterman, bro. Every single one. Amazing. Michael tweeted, the margins in some of these counties. Look at this. Fetterman in Erie County, 79.9%. What? Lackawanna, 72.2%. Dauphin, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, people in Dauphin, 72.2%. York, 80.6%. What? I mean, Drax them sklounced is an understatement. So, for those of you who don't know anything about Fetterman, first of all, he's the dude who is literally wearing, like, shorts in the middle of a snowstorm, and that alone is based. He's 6'8". He wanders around like a Yeti, and he actually has some decent politics, or at the very least, way better politics than his opponent. Fetterman is an American politician serving as the 34th Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania since 2019. A member of the Democratic Party, he previously served as mayor of Braddock from 2006 to 2019. Fetterman is now the Democratic nominee for 2022 U.S. Senate election in Pennsylvania. Then they go on to say his college and whatnot. He first ran for the Senate in 2016. He finished third in the Democratic primary behind Katie McGinty and Joe Sestak, with 19.4% of the vote. Following his unsuccessful run for Senate in 2016, Fetterman ran for Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania in 2018 in a field of 4 candidates. He won the Democratic primary and was elected Lieutenant Governor in November 2018. And then, they say this. A progressive, Fetterman advocates for Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour, and implementing a wealth tax. Now, I'll give you more specifics on his political positions. Fetterman is generally described as a social and fiscal progressive, including by himself abortion. Fetterman is against introducing legislative restrictions on abortion and has expressed support for the codification of Roe v. Wade into federal law. He opposes limits on abortion, criminal justice reform. Prison reform is one of Fetterman's signature issues, advocating for more rehabilitation action, as well as clemency for model prisoners. A part of his role as lieutenant governor, he serves as the chair of Pennsylvania's Board of Pardons, which processes clemency requests and forwards them to the governor. Fetterman urged the board to process requests more quickly. Fetterman is in favor of abolishing capital punishment in Pennsylvania, stating that he wholly supports Governor Tom Wolf's moratorium on the death penalty. He has called the death penalty inhumane, antiquated, expensive, and a flawed system of punishment. On environmental issues, Fetterman frequently emphasizes the need to balance decarbonization efforts with their effects on fossil fuel industry jobs. He supports permitting fracking, although he advocates for stricter environmental regulations. In 2021, Fetterman said that he supports moving towards a de facto moratorium on fracking because the transition is going to be toward green and renewable energy. On the filibuster, Fetterman supports ending the filibuster in the United States Senate. He also said that Democrats need to be more ruthless like Republicans in order to pass legislative priorities. Base, dog. Gun rights. Fetterman supports greater restrictions upon the process to buy a gun, including universal background checks and the ending of loopholes that allow for mentally ill and domestic abusers to purchase firearms. Healthcare. Previously, Fetterman has described himself as a supporter of Medicare for All, saying that healthcare is a fundamental human need and right. In 2022, Fetterman stated that he would support whatever path is necessary to expand healthcare accessibility, including the expansion of Obamacare. So look, there's two ways to read this. On the one hand, you can say that's weaselly, he's sort of backing off of Medicare for All. On the other hand, you could say, on the path to Medicare for All, you have to go from Obamacare to expanded Obamacare to public option to eventually single payer. It's up to you to determine how you read that. What I will say is, even if it is kind of weaselly and it sounds like he's backing off of it, he's still about 789 times better than Connor Lamb, who is the most corporate of corporate Democrats. So it's still positive that he won. On marijuana, he's a proponent of legalizing marijuana, calling the issue a political bazooka, and that leaving the issue alone is giving an opportunity for another party to gain political support for pro-marijuana legalization agenda. He argued that if conservative South Dakota voters were willing to approve a ballot measure legalizing recreational marijuana, Pennsylvania should legalize it too. He also supports expunging criminal convictions related to marijuana. Minimum wage, Fetterman supports raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Taxation, Fetterman supports implementing a wealth tax in the United States. However, Fetterman has not laid out an income level for when a wealth tax should be applied. Instead, he said, you know it when you see it. And has said, those who have yachts could be used as a potential benchmark. Anyway, so it goes on to talk about his personal life. I just want to give you a little bit about his political positions. Now, the only note of caution is this. Generally, with these sorts of races, you have establishment Democrats and super PACs and big money interests flood the zone with money to the opponent. In this instance, they sort of gave up on Connor Lamb pretty quickly. Like, they tried to give him an influx of cash and give him institutional support, but then he wasn't really budging the poll numbers, and they were like, you know what, we tap out. We're not even going to help him anymore. And so Fetterman was able to drax them sclounce because there was no... In the final weeks, maybe a month, leading up to the election, there was really no hope for Lamb. He wasn't getting that institutional support anymore. So maybe they thought, hey, we can't overcome this guy, he's too powerful. Or maybe they thought, yeah, he might be a progressive, but maybe ultimately he'll end up playing ball. And so they didn't view him as much of a threat. So I don't know which thing it is. Was it like, hey, he's too far ahead, we give up, even though he's a progressive, he's going to end up winning? Or was it like, he says he's progressive, but low-key, he'll actually play ball a little bit? I don't know, but again, either way, significantly better than Connor Lamb in every single metric. And even if Fetterman disappoints us in 1,000 different ways, Lamb would disappoint us in 4,000 different ways. So we'll see what ends up happening. But on paper, he's not terrible. All right, more. Fetterman's victory should redefine the Beltway assumptions on electability. A burly, tattooed progressive who suffered a stroke on Friday just defeated a clean-cut veteran, centrist two-term congressman. Totally true. Totally true. I love that point. So then we get this from Dave Wasserman. We're not going to find out the outcome of the Pennsylvania Senate GOP primary tonight, absent a Barnett win. That's probably the best news John Fetterman could ask for. So you had a very vicious primary on the Republican side with Dr. Oz in it. And as of right now, as I'm talking to you, Dr. Oz is up. And it looks like he's likely to win. But we may be in recount territory. So we'll see what happens. Now, a lot of people are saying, hey, it's good if Fetterman can go up against Dr. Oz because Dr. Oz isn't as formidable a candidate. I actually don't agree with that. I think Oz has a shot. I think he has a chance, and I think he's probably the best candidate on the Republican side. He's charismatic. He's a good politician, even though his positions are ridiculous. And so Fetterman versus Oz is going to be a heavyweight slugfest, man. But yeah, Dr. Oz, endorsed by Trump, looks like he's going to pull it out, but we'll have to wait and see the final results, which obviously should come in relatively soon, although if there's a recount, it'll take a lot longer. Guys, then we have this. So we move over to North Carolina. Chuck Edwards defeats Madison Cawthorne. Madison Cawthorne is going gonzo. Now, Madison sort of put up a hell of a fight. He barely lost, 31.72% to 33.49%. This is only with 94% in, but, Edwards won. I don't think he can't make up that difference there. This is with the Republican establishment declaring all-out war on Madison Cawthorne. Now, why did they declare war? Well, because Cawthorne said, yeah, there's orgies and drug parties here in D.C., and I've been invited to them. And so they didn't like that, hey, this guy's blowing the whistle on us. And so then they hit him with every single smear tactic in the book and released all sorts of dirt they had on him, which really makes you wonder, is there a file of dirt on every single politician from the establishments of their respective parties? The answer might be yes, because it was a coordinated hit job after that. And, you guys saw the thing, whether he's dressing as a woman or the newer one, which I didn't even cover, is that there was a video where he was naked and mock face fucking his own cousin. What? And so they hit him with everything they had, and he went down. And that's a shot across the bow of hey, don't fuck with the establishment of the parties. And he tried to play that game, even though his voting record is right in alignment with the Republican establishment. He took too many shots at them, and they were like, you know what, you gotta go. You're not playing ball enough. And so hopefully now we see Madison Cawthorne Unchained, where he's going to be here's, by the way, who's attending those orgies and drug parties. And I believe him that those exist. I'm just not exactly sure he was invited to them, because I think he always rubbed a lot of these establishment Republicans the wrong way. So Madison is gone, man. Madison is gone. Now we also have this. This was a tremendous win. We talked about this earlier with the Intercept article, but Summerlee ended up beating Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. And so at the last minute, AIPAC funded the shit out of Irwin. Big money poured in the last few weeks trying to get Irwin across the finish line. And they came up just short. That is phenomenal. Here's what David Sirota says about this. Democratic elites literally ran a union avoidance corporate lawyer against State Representative Summerlee in Pittsburgh. I mean, really think about that. Union avoidance lawyer. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The Democratic Party. That happened. So that's how, and I think he went on to say this too, these people, they're not even bothering to hide it anymore. They're not even bothering to hide it. They're just open with the fact that they're corrupt corporatists. And that backfired. So, again, this was mentioned in the Ryan Grimm article, but it's still noteworthy. This race really shows what an impact AIPAC's super PAC money had on progressive versus moderate races. It looks like Jamie for Oregon will take out an incumbent because outside super PACs only spent $785,000 on her race. They spent at least $3 million in Pennsylvania 12, North Carolina 1, and North Carolina 4. And you can see Dave Wasserman says, we've got a small batch of first results from Multnomah County in Portland, and Blue Dog Representative Kurt Schrader is trailing progressive Jamie McLeod Skinner, 57-43. Long way to go in Oregon, but good sign for the challenger. Now, again, it looks like in this race, Schrader's gone, and McLeod Skinner is going to hold on. It's not totally confirmed yet, but McLeod Skinner is up and very, very likely to take it. And so I love this fact because the big money interests spent a little bit less on this race than other races because they thought there's no way this progressive challenger is going to win. And then it looks like the progressive challenger is going to win. So they only spent $785,000 versus $3 million in other areas. And this is the result. So again, you don't ever let them make you believe the establishment is unbeatable. In all seriousness, it has taken all the king's horses and all the king's men in order to keep the establishment together and get these people across the finish line. You know, even just going back to Bernie versus Biden in the 2020 primary. Like, in order for Biden to win, he needed Amy Klobuchar, Mayor Pete, and all the other candidates, centrist candidates, to drop out, endorse him at the last minute, and he needed Elizabeth Warren to stay in to siphon some votes from Bernie. And then he needed the media to get him across the finish line by saying, hey, this is the only guy that can beat Trump. Electability, electability, electability. All of those things had to happen in order for Biden to win. If one of those things doesn't happen, Bernie probably wins. And so the idea of like, man, they pulled out all the stops and they always end up winning. My ass cheeks, they always end up winning. Look at this. Progressives nearly had a clean sweep on election night. Another huge win. So Josh Shapiro won the Pennsylvania governor's Democratic primary race. NBC News projects. Shout out to them for saying governor's Democratic primary race and not gubernatorial Democratic primary race. I hate the word gubernatorial with a burning passion. So anyway, the reason why this guy's awesome is he has gone after the Catholic Church. He's, brought litigation against the Catholic Church. He's gone after student loan predators. He actually has a track record of trying to go after big, powerful actors who abuse their power and who are corrupt. And so Sirota swears by this guy, says, go look at his record. And it looks like this is actually a decent candidate here, that's wonderful to hear. Now, oftentimes a lot of these people end up letting us down. We'll have to see. Maybe that happens. Maybe that doesn't, but it looks like a decent candidate is now through. Now, will that candidate end up winning in Pennsylvania ultimately? I don't know. We'll have to see. But this is even more good news. Now, this is the part that I've been waiting to get to. NBC News asked Democratic voters if they wanted larger-scale policies or smaller-scale policies, and the results will shock you. Will they, Mike Casca? I don't think they will. In thinking about the Democratic candidates in your state and how they approach issues like healthcare, climate change, college affordability, and economic opportunity, which of the following comes closer to describing the candidate you prefer? Someone who proposes larger-scale policies that cost more and might be harder to pass into law but could bring major change on these issues. 63%. Someone who proposes smaller-scale policies that cost less and might be easier to pass into law but will bring less change on the issues. 33%. That says everything. That says everything. So, a gigantic majority of Democratic voters despise the Manchins and the Sinemas and the incremental change. People want real fundamental change, and they're onto the charlatans and the con men and the frauds. And that's what this tells me. So, a huge, huge rebuke, as Ryan Grimm put it, of the Manchin-Sinema wing of the party. Huge rebuke from the voters. Trump's April-May endorsees. So, here's how Trump's endorsements fared in recent elections. Vance won with 32%. Gilbert won with 29%. Herbster, awesome name, lost with 30%. Cawthorne lost with 32%. Hines won. Oz, there's question marks there, but he's up. He's probably going to win. McGeechan, 25%, lost. Mastriano, 44%, win. Mooney, 54%, win. Budd, 59%, win. Okay, so what does this tell me? This tells me that Trump is still a major player on the Republican side. He's still the leader of the Republican Party. And his endorsement comes with a lot of sway. But it also tells me it's not ironclad. It's not ironclad. And one area where voters are not with Trump is rigged election, rigged election, rigged election, stop the steal, I really won. Every poll shows that. Every poll shows that. And that's his Achilles heel. And he says that's his main, litmus test for picking a VP for him in 2024 and for all these candidates. And so if he would just drop that, he'd be an even bigger force. But that honestly makes him a weaker candidate and makes his endorsements weaker. Makes his handpicked candidates weaker. And so I think that's probably the main reason why you see some of them lose, even though many of them win. But anyway, that's where we're at. Let me not get ahead of myself. I got a Jordan Peterson segment coming up. But that's your election night breakdown. Now, I mean, the thing that sucks is this. You're finally starting to see the backlash against the Manchin types and the Sinema types, and you see Democratic voters, even normie Democratic voters, are like, for the love of God, do something. For the love of God, do some real change. You're finally starting to see that. But these are primaries, and then these people are going to go on to general elections, and they're going on to general elections in like a wave Republican year. So then what'll happen is, if some of these candidates lose, or a bunch of these candidates lose, then you're going to have corporate Democrats turn around again and say, see, you needed to vote for us all along. So, in other words, corporate Democrats and corrupt Democrats mess everything up, make people hate the Democratic Party, and then the progressives edge them out in this primary, but then they're running in a Republican wave year. And so the people who caused the problem are going to pretend like they're the solution. See, you went too far left with these choices. You should have just picked the safe corporate Democrats. And the response to that should be, no, if these progressive candidates lose, you know what? Corporate Democratic candidates would have lost by even more. Because you guys are way worse. And you caused the problems in the first place. So, you know how it works. They always blame the left, no matter what. And they're going to commit to doing that. And so just prepare yourself for that. But at least as of right now, it's honestly the best night for the left electorally, maybe in my life. And that says a lot. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.